Shalom Israel, it's Kazawan, and the name of this video is Zephaniah 3 and 9, Hebrew now or Hebrew later. Now there's a lot of back and forth among Israelites about whether or not to deal with the Hebrew language in these times. There's questions like, should we go into the Hebrew or should we just deal with the English? Should we try to learn the Hebrew now or should we just wait till the kingdom? Do we even know the real Hebrew now, or is all this Hebrew corrupt? There's so many discussions about this topic, so let's see if we can come to some type of understanding. Now, the verse that usually comes up among Israelites is Zephaniah 3 and 9. So let's read it and see what it says. Zephaniah 3 and 9, it says, "For then will I turn to the people a pure language, that they may all call upon the name of the Lord to serve him with one consent." So most of us are familiar with this verse. And the most common breakdown is that this verse is saying that when Yahushua returns, he's going to give us back the pure Hebrew language, as well as his true Hebrew name and the Most High's true Hebrew name. That's the most common breakdown for this verse. Now, let me say this very clearly. The language that we're going to speak in the kingdom of heaven is Hebrew, and Hebrew is a holy language. Personally, I promote Hebrew study because that is our language as Israelites. But here's the thing about Zephaniah 3 and 9. It's not talking about the Hebrew language, and it's not talking about the true Hebrew name of the Most High. The pure language in this verse is talking about the pure word of the Most High. Again, it's talking about the uncorrupted, pure words of the Most High. Let's read it again and get the understanding. It says, "For then will I turn to the people a pure language." Now, in order to get a deeper understanding of words, you have to be willing to put the time in to look up the words. Here it says, "For then will I turn to the people a pure language." But when you look up this word language in the Hebrew, it's not as simple as you might think. See, for those who feel like we shouldn't look into the Hebrew or the Greek right now, let's think about this. We know that the Old Testament was originally written in Hebrew. So it only makes sense to research the words in Hebrew, if you have the ability to do that. That way, we can get the proper context of what the words meant when our forefathers wrote them. For example, here it says, "For then will I turn to the people a pure language." The word language in this verse is the Hebrew word shapah. But notice, the first meaning of this word is lip. That's very important. We'll come back to that in a minute. It also says language, speech, and it has other contextual meanings also. Letter A says lip. Letter B says language. But again, we see that the first or priority meaning of this word language is lip. So, what is Zephaniah 3 and 9 actually saying? Let's read it again. It says, "For then will I turn to the people a pure language," or a pure lip, meaning lips that speak pure words, lips that are not defiled. This is not talking about the Hebrew language. It's much deeper than that. Look at this. Isaiah 6 and 5. It says, "Then said I, woe is me, for I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips." The word lips here is shapah. This is the same word used in Zephaniah 3 and 9 for pure language. So Isaiah said he was a man of unclean lips. Watch this. It says, "And I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips," meaning the Israelites. they had unclean lips. Now, we know that Isaiah and the Israelites spoke Hebrew, but he said his lips were unclean. They were not pure. So that shows us that the pure language in Zephaniah 3 and 9 is not talking about the Hebrew language, because Isaiah spoke Hebrew, but his lips were still unclean. The thing that made Isaiah's lips unclean was his sin. Watch. Look at verse 6. It says, "Then flew one of the seraphims unto me, having a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with the tongs from off the altar." Remember, Isaiah said his lips were unclean. So this seraphim takes a hot coal from off the altar. Now watch what he does with it. Verse 7, it says, "And he laid it upon my mouth and said, Lo, this hath touched thy lips, and thine iniquity is taken away, and thy sin purged." So when the seraphim put the hot coal on Isaiah's unclean lips, his sin was taken away and his lips were purified. The hot coal is the Most High's word. When the word was put upon Isaiah's lips, his opinions were burned away. Now he was able to speak a pure language, which is the pure words of the Most High. Watch. Let's look more into this pure language. Psalms 12 and 6, it says, "The words of the Lord are pure words, as silver tried in a furnace of earth, purified 7 times." So we see that the words of the Most High are pure words. Look at this. Proverbs 30 and 5. It says, "Every word of the Most High is pure." Again, we see that every word of the Most High is pure. So, if all Israel spoke the pure word of the Most High right now, we would already have the pure language. The problem is, we don't all speak the pure word of the Most High. Some of us speak our own words. Some of us speak the words of Egyptology, Islam, Buddhism, or whatever it is. Our people are into all types of opinions and doctrines and philosophies and whatever else. And that's what Zephaniah 3 and 9 is actually talking about. It's talking about cleansing our lips from speaking corruptible words and turning back to the pure word of the Most High. That is the pure language. Look at this. Malachi 2 and 7. It says, "For the priest's lips should keep knowledge." The word lips in this verse is shapah, the same word for language in Zephaniah 3 and 9. It says, "For the priest's lips should keep knowledge," meaning whenever the priest speaks, he should speak words of knowledge. It says, "And they should seek the law at his mouth." So a priest should give guidance to the people according to the law. Why? It says, "For he is the messenger of the Lord of hosts," meaning a priest is supposed to be the mouthpiece of the Most High. The words that come out of his lips should always line up with the word of the Most High. Not only the priest, every Israelite in the truth is supposed to speak according to the words of the Most High. Look at this. Proverbs 8 and 6. It says, "Hear, for I will speak of excellent things, and the opening of my lips," again, shapah, the same word from Zephaniah 3 and 9. It says, "The opening of my lips shall be right things." Now, what are the right things that we should speak? Watch this. Verse 7, it says, "For my mouth shall speak truth." So truth is supposed to come forth from our lips. Why? It says, "And wickedness is an abomination to my lips." So when we speak wickedness instead of truth, our lips become an abomination. Our words are not pure. We have to speak the truth which is the word, so that when we speak, our lips are pure. See, the Most High is the source of the word. He is pure. Therefore, his word is pure because it comes directly from him, a pure source. His word is not contaminated by any foreign substance. So when you speak his pure words, you are speaking a pure language. That's what Zephaniah 3:9 is saying. Let's read it again. It says, "For then will I turn to the people a pure language," meaning a pure lip or lips that speak pure words, his word, the truth. Now, why is he going to give us lips that speak truth? It says that they may all call upon the name of the Lord, not just knowing his name in Hebrew. It says to serve him with one consent. See, you can know the Most High's name in Hebrew and still not serve him. So that's not the point of this verse. The point of this verse is for us as a nation to speak truth so that when we call on the Most High, it will be with one consent, meaning we will be on one accord in the truth. The pure language is talking about speaking the truth according to his word. It tells us that in this same chapter. In this verse, it says he will give us a pure language. So let's see what's going to happen after he gives it to us. Verse 13, it says, "The remnant of Israel shall not do iniquity, nor speak lies, neither shall a deceitful tongue be found in their mouth." So we clearly see that the purpose of us receiving a pure language is so that we don't speak deceitful words. This pure language will allow us to speak only truth. All of our words will be pure. That's talking about the Most High's word. That's the focus. But again, I support studying the Hebrew, and I'm going to give you an example of why. Look at this. Now, these are 3 different verses from the Bible: Esther 1:22, Isaiah 36:13, and Zephaniah 3:9. All 3 of these verses have the word language in them. The first one says, the language of every people. The second one says, the Jews' language. And the third one says, a pure language. All 3 verses use the word language, but these are actually 3 different words. And the only way you will know that is if you go into the Hebrew. Let me say that again. The only way you will know that is if you go into the Hebrew. All 3 verses in English say language, but these are 3 different Hebrew words. Let's look at the first one. Esther 1:22, it says, "For he sent letters into all the king's provinces, into every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, and that it should be published according to the language of every people." The word language in this verse is the Hebrew word lashawan. Here you see it says tongue. This can be a literal tongue, but it usually deals with actual languages, rather it's Hebrew, Greek, Latin, Assyrian, or whatever. Just like we see in Esther 1:22. It says, "And that it should be published according to the language of every people," the lashawan of every people. Now, let's look at Isaiah 36:13. It says, "Then Rabshakeh stood and cried with a loud voice in the Jews' language, and said, Hear ye the words of the great king, the king of Assyria." Now, the word language in this verse is the Hebrew word Yahawadayath. In modern Hebrew, it's pronounced Yehudith. but in ancient Hebrew, we say Yahawadayath. It's number 3066, and it says, in the Jewish language, in Hebrew. In other words, this is talking about the literal Hebrew language. Just like Isaiah 36:13 says, and cry with a loud voice in the Jews' language, in Hebrew, and Yahawadayath. So here's what you have to understand. Whenever you specifically talk about the Hebrew language, the word used is Yahawadayath. Look at this. I'm going to show you a verse with the numbers visible so that you can see what I'm saying. This is Nehemiah 13:24 in the Blue Letter Bible. It says, and their children spake half in the speech of Ashdod and could not speak in the Jews' language, the Hebrew. See the number? It's 3066, Yahawadayath. They couldn't speak that. It says, but according to the language, 3956, Lashawan, of each people, meaning the different languages spoken by different nations. So Lashawan deals with languages in general. But whenever you specifically talk about the Hebrew language, the word is Yahawadayath. So, if the pure language in Zephaniah 3:9 is specifically talking about Hebrew, shouldn't the word for language be Yahawadayath? Yes, but we already know that that word is not there. What word is there? Let's read it again. It says, for then will I turn to the people a pure language. As we see, the word language here is shapah. Again, if this was specifically talking about the Hebrew, the word for language here would be Yahawadayath. Instead, the word shapah is here, meaning lip, or the words that come out of your lips. Pure words, which are the words of the Most High. So you see that we have Lashawan, Yahawadayath, and shapah, three different Hebrew words, all translated into the same English word, language. Now, even though the English word language can be used for all of those words, you can clearly see that you don't get the same effect as you do when you understand the Hebrew context. And the only way you can do that is to look into the Hebrew. Now understand, this is not a salvation issue. You don't have to know the Hebrew to get the kingdom. But that doesn't mean we should disregard the Hebrew either. Those of us who are teachers, it's our responsibility to search out these things so that we can provide the best answer possible to others. The Hebrew is important. Our forefathers told us it was very important. Look at this. This is the prologue to the book of Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha, and is dealing with the Hebrew language. It says, wherefore, let me entreat you to read it with favor and attention, and to pardon us, wherein we may seem to come short of some words, which we have labored to interpret. So he said they put in a lot of time and effort. They labored to properly interpret the Hebrew into other languages. But here's the problem. It says, for the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated into another tongue have not the same force in them. Meaning, when you translate from the Hebrew into another language, you lose some of the punch. Yes, it's a blessing to have the Bible in English and other languages also. But the truth is, when you read the Bible in English, it doesn't have the same force as it does when you go into the Hebrew. That's just the truth. And if you actually study the Hebrew, then you know that's the truth. Now, that's not to say a brother can't read the Bible in English and wake up to being an Israelite and apply the law, statutes, and commandments. That's great. All praises to the Most High. But as far as studying and getting a deeper understanding of certain things in the Bible, the best thing to do is to go into the Hebrew, the language it was written in. Look at this. It says, "And not only these things, but the law itself and the prophets and the rest of the books have no small difference when they are spoken in their own language." So again, there is a difference between the English and the Hebrew. And it's not a small difference, because part of the Hebrew language is a Hebraic thought process. Our foreparents had different concepts and ideals from what we have today. And a lot of those concepts are revealed when you go into the actual language. That's why it said, "For the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated into another tongue have not the same force in them." I showed you an example of that with the word language, and that was just a small example. Now, look at this. 1 Corinthians 14 and 39. It says, "Wherefore, brethren, covet to prophesy," meaning you should desire to speak the truth of this word. That's the first priority. Make sure you speak this truth, because that is the pure language. But watch this. It says, "And forbid not to speak with tongues," meaning languages. Let's look up this word tongues, because this is the New Testament. Here it is. It's the Greek word glossa, number 1100. It says, "The tongue, a member of the body, an organ of speech, a tongue." Look at this. It says, "The language or dialect used by a particular people, distinct from that of other nations." So this is dealing with languages in general. The verse says, "Forbid not to speak with tongues," meaning don't forbid a brother from dealing with other languages, especially the Hebrew and the Greek. Those are the main languages of the Bible. Now let me also say this. If you are a brother that deals with the Hebrew and the Greek, you shouldn't come against another brother who doesn't go into languages. You know why? Because the Most High gives different gifts to different men. Everybody doesn't have the same gifts. Some people study other languages, some people don't. We shouldn't be divided over that. If we all put our different gifts together, we'll be stronger as a unit, as a people, and that's what it's about. Let's go back to Zephaniah 3 and 9. It says, "For then will I turn to the people a pure language, shapah, a pure lip, or lips that speak truth." Why? "That they may all call upon the name of the Lord." For what purpose? To serve him with one consent. The key part of Zephaniah 3 and 9 is to serve him with one consent. Serving the Most High with one consent is not a language issue. That's an obedience issue. Remember, our foreparents had the Hebrew, but they still didn't serve the Most High with one consent. Why? Because in order to serve the Most High with one consent, everybody has to be on one accord, operating in the truth of the word. Again, if your gift is breakdowns, then do breakdowns. If your gift is studying languages, study languages. If your gift is going into history, then bring out the history. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy. But we should all be on one accord, using our different gifts for the glory of the Most High. See, when the scripture says that we should all speak the same thing, it's talking about the word, not the language. The pure word of the Most High, that's the pure language. That's how we all speak the same thing, by speaking according to the word. But again, I support studying Hebrew for deeper understanding, because that's our language. And there's nothing wrong with us as a people trying to reconnect back to our heritage. Speaking Hebrew is not a salvation issue, but If we can wake up to being the Israelites, and if we can turn back to the law, statutes, and commandments, why can't we turn back to our language? We can, for those of us who have a desire to do so. Now, as far as the correct pronunciation of the words, or the ancient Hebrew versus the modern Hebrew, I'll deal with that in a separate video because I want to start out fresh on that topic. But this video is to show that Zephaniah 3 and 9 is not talking about Hebrew. So understanding that, we don't have to turn away from the Hebrew. But let's say when Yahushua comes, he does give us a brand new language. Okay, I have no problem with that. But that doesn't change the value of what we have right now in these times. But as I said, I'll deal with the Hebrew issue in another video. So for now, I hope somebody got some understanding. And with that, I say, Shalom.